Okay. Can you all hear me, students? Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So since yesterday there were some technical net issues, so I will just revise the things which I have told yesterday. So as a continuation of this communicable diseases, so today I'll be discussing about the warm infection or the parasitic infections. So in this basic uh, things which we need to or must to know, that is the terminologies like host. Who is a host? Host is the one who harbors a parasite. Who harbors what? Parasite. And this host, it can be what? Definitive host or intermediate host. What is the meaning of the word definitive host? Anybody, students? Monesh, Radhika, Smriti, anybody? So definitive host means it is the one in which a sexual life cycle will take place. So such a host we call it as what? Definitive host. Are you all clear? Then what is an intermediate? What is an intermediate host? Can you kindly switch up the microphone? Thank you. So intermediate host means what? It is a host in which the asexual life cycle will happen. So what do you mean by sexual life cycle? Sexual life cycle means what? There will be two gametes. That is one male, another one is a female gamete will be there. So when these two they mate, and in which host they mate, and that host we call it as what? Definitive host. And the intermediate host means what? There won't be any gamete formation, like no mating of these gametes. So just they keep on dividing. So that we call it as what? Intermediate host. And there is one more type of host that we call it as what? Paratenic host. That is paratenic host. So what is the meaning of this paratenic host? Students, can anybody? Monesh and others. So paratenic host means what? It is a type of host in which the parasite remains viable without further development. That means what? The parasite or the infection causing agent, it will remain in that host. So it won't multiply, no further developments, nothing is seen morphologically or it's any physiological changes, nothing can be seen. It will remain like that only. So that type of host we call it as what? Parentic host, or it is also called as transport host. It is also called as what? Transport host. And students, if there is any technical issues, no, kindly inform me then and there itself so that it can be rectified. And after that, we need to know a concept called as host parasite relationship. So, what is the relationship between the host and the parasite? How these two are related? So, one relationship can be symbiosis. That means what? Both the partners they benefit from each other. So, like there is a good amount of benefit to the host and even the parasite which is living on the host. And what about commensalism? Commensalism means what? A parasite will be having benefit, but very good thing is that it is not causing any injury to the host. That we call it as what? Just a second. And then what is parasitism? Sorry for the disturbance. Can you all hear me, students, now? Students? Yeah, so
Yes,
what is a
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
parasitism? Parasitism means what? Here a parasite will benefit, but this fellow, what he will do, in turn, he will cause injury to the host. This is very important. He will see this picture over here. So this is the intestine, lumen of the intestine. Here a worm is there and it is sucking the blood and it is having the nutrients from the host. So it is benefiting and in turn it is causing damage to the host in the form of the ulcer or the death or the necrosis of the tissue. So that we call it as what? Parasitism. And the one which causes this parasitism is called as what? Parasite. So what do you mean by parasite over here? It is an organism that depend on another organism for its survival, and in turn it will cause the injury also to the host. And these parasites, they can be of two types, that is microparasites and macroparasites. So what are microparasites? The name itself is defining here. So microparasites means what? They can be seen only under microscope. So they cannot be seen under the naked eyes, and they are very small and they are unicellular. And the best example for this is what? All the protozoans like Entamoeba histolytica, Entamoeba coli. So many variants are there. So they all come under the category of what? Microparasites. Then what about the macroparasites? Again, here the name itself is defining it is what? They are visible to our naked eyes. So we can see with our eyes directly. So they are called as what? Macroparasites. They are large and they are multicellular. And what is the example for this? Students, anybody? Gautam, anyone? It is helminthes. So what are the examples for this helminthes? Ascaris and ankylostoma. So different variants are there, flukes are there. So all these are the examples of what? Macroparasites. Then the classification of parasites is very important because in the recent AIMS question paper and all, they have given a picture, identify the parasite. So if it is like a slide picture or microscopically something is seen, so you should be like able to identify what type of parasite it is. So based on the cell, it can be categorized into unicellular or multicellular. So the unicellular are called as what? Protozoa. Multicellular are called as metazoa or helminthes. And this protozoa again further subdivided into four types. They are subdivided into how many types? Four types based on the organ of into four types. One is amoebioids, that is, they are also called as sarcodina. Another one is sporozoa. Sporozoa means what? They don't have any organ of locomotion, that is, no cilia, no flagella, no pseudopodia, nothing is there. Then after that, mastigophora. Mastigophora means what? They are the ones which contain flagella, and with the help of this flagella, they move. So that's why they are called as what? Flagellates or mastigophora. Then ciliates means what? They contain the cilia, and because of that, they move. So they are called as what? Ciliates. And then coming to the helminthes. So or the multicellular parasites. So again, these are divided into platyhelminthes and nematohelminthes. Platyhelminthes means what? They are tape like they are flat. How you see a sellotape now, how flat it looks, like that these platyhelminthes they look. So they are also called as what? Students, look at the word over here. They are also called as what? Flatworms. And these flatworms are further subdivided into trematodes and cystodes. And again, this helminths, another category is nematodes. Nematodes means what? They are not flat. The moment you look them morphologically, they look round. So their body structure itself is something round. Whereas flatworms means what? They absolutely look like a tape like. So that's why they are called as flatworms. Next, a little bit advanced into this protozoa classification. So this amoeba or amoeboid, so how they are categorized based on what? Organ of locomotion. Do you all agree with this, students? Based on the organ of locomotion, they are categorized. So this amoeboid or rhizopoda, what is the organ of locomotion here? It is nothing but this pseudopodia. With the help of pseudopodia, they move, and they basically like to live in the colon of the man, and sometimes extra colon like living also can be seen. And best examples are what? Entamoeba histolytica, Entamoeba hartmanni, E. disper, and Entamoeba coli. So these are all what? Pathogenic amoeboid uh, like protozoa. And there is one more category, that is free living amoeba. What do you mean by free living amoeba? Students, Sirisha, Chaitanya, anybody? What do you mean by free living parasites? So free living means these are the ones they live freely in the nature. So they can live in the soil, they can live in the air, they can live in the water. So they are free to live anywhere on this planet. That's why they are called as what? Free living amoeba. And example is what? Pathogenical, like which are important to humans. From our point of view is Naegleria fowleri, Acanthamoeba. So these are like potentially pathogenic. So once an MCQ has been asked, so like a CSF sample has been given, and then in that CSF sample, like which is the identify this protozoa. So which one you can say? Acanthamoeba or Naegleri floweri? Students, it is Acanthamoeba. And why from the community point of view it is important? Because most of this they are involved with causation of the outbreaks, especially the gastrointestinal disorders, especially the diarrhea causing diseases. These protozoans, they are most commonly involved with this diarrheal diseases. Then in the celiacs, the best example is Balantidium coli. Just remember the names. And their organ of locomotion is what? Cilia. And then flagellates, the example is very important, Giardia lamblia. Why this is important, students? From our environment topic. Like in US, long back what happened? There was an outbreak of waterborne diseases because the water purification was not effective because the water samples they showed this particular protozoa, Giardia lamblia. So it is the one which was responsible for the causation of the sudden outbreak of the like gastrointestinal symptoms among the people who consume that source of water. So now it is important that we need to purify the water in such a way that it should be able to kill this particular organism or the protozoa also. Then after that, we have got the tissue, other type of which infects vaginal or the genital structure, that is Trichomonas vaginalis. Then after that, these two are Leishmania and Trypanosoma. These are called as what? Blood. These are the ones which love to live in the blood of the man. So that's why they are called as what? Blood flagellates. So again here from the community or the public health point of view, which one is important, students? Students, which one? Leishmania. Sirisha, Chaitanya.
Yes, ma'am. Rishman.
Okay. So which one is important? Leishmania. So this are the ones which you need to remember over here. Then again in sporozoa, no organ of locomotion. And the important ones are what? Plasmodium. So it is the one, again it lives in what? The blood. And babesia, it also babesia, it is also one of the category which included under sporozoa, even it lives in the blood. Then after that, toxoplasma gondii, cryptosporidium, isospora. So these are the different organisms which fall under the category of sporozoa. Then again, helminthes, again, some questions can be asked. They can directly give the worm picture and they can ask you like which it falls under which category of helminthes. So look at this first picture. It is what? The cylindrical worms. These are called as what? Nematodes. And then again, you have got tape-like worms. These are called as what? Cestodes. And this one, can you see what is the appearance of this particular worm? Helminthes, how does it look like? It looks like a leaf shape. So that's why we call it as what? Trematodes. So trematodes are the ones which look like leaf shape. Yes. Then there are some other features of this nematodes, cestodes, and trematodes. So the roundworms, no, they have got one particular feature, that is in them male and female are separate. They are monoecious. That means what? Male and females are separate. Whereas in cestodes, what? They are dioecious. That means what? There is no separate male or female. Everything is included in one organism. So that's why we call them as what? Hermaphrodites. Then trematodes means what? These are the leaf-like looking organisms. They are also hermaphrodites, except what? Cystosoma. Then one more feature of this cestode or tapeworm is what? Their body is what? They are segmented. Can you all see these segments over here? Students, can you all see the segments? So that if the segments are
Yes, ma'am.
present on the body, then we call it as what? Tapeworms, or we call it as what? Cystodes. So how do we remember all these things? So thing is that, remember, CT scan, that is cystodes, and their tapeworms, or like the one which has got segments on the body. Then trematodes. So trematodes means what? TF, you remember. So TF. So if you put one more line, it will become what? Trematodes. That is flukes. They are the ones which have got a leaf-shaped appearance. Any doubts there? So again, this trematodes and cystodes and nematodes, no, again based on the location, they can be categorized into tissue nematodes or tissue trematodes or tissue cystodes, and they can be intestinal trematodes, cystode, or nematodes. Now, from the community point of view, the important one is what? Amoebiasis. So, what is amoebiasis? It is a what? Gastrointestinal. It is a gastrointestinal disorder which is caused by the protozoan species, which is unicellular. The name of that organism is what? Entamoeba. Histolytica. Can you all look at the picture over here? So, what is this picture it is showing? It is showing the active form, that is a trophozoite. Another one is what? The cystic form, that is the quadrinucleated cystic form of this Entamoeba histolytica. Am I audible for you all students? Slides are visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Entamoeba histolytica is one of the major cause of the gastrointestinal disorder. It is caused by unicellular protozoan. Histolytica means, histo means what? The cells. Lytica means what? It is causing the lysis or breakdown. So, it is such a unicellular organism and it is causing such a mischievous or the grievous thing to the human intestine. And this fellow, he really loves to live in the human intestine. So it basically likes to live in the a large intestine, that is in the colon portion of the humans. And it is caused because of the contamination of the food, because of the fecal matter. So the person who is infected, so that fellow will release what? The cyst in his fecal matter, that is quadrinucleated. Quadri means what, students? The cyst, it contains how many nuclei? How many nuclei, students? Look at the picture over here. One, two,
Four.
three, four. So how many nuclei are present in the cyst? Four nuclei. So whenever the fecal matter containing these four nuclei, then it is done. And if the person ingests at least 10 to minimum 10 is required to cause this amoebiasis. So 10 cysts if he ingests which are quadrinucleated, and it is done that that fellow will get this amoebiasis. And very important is that not everybody will be getting or showing the manifestation. Only in those fellows who are immunocompromised, like the one who are having HIV, or the ladies who are pregnant. Pregnancy itself is an immunocompromised situation, and elderly people, infants, and even the people who are suffering from cancer. So they are the most high risk groups to get affected with this amoebiasis. And it causes what? Diarrhea like symptoms with the blood. Now can you say what is this? It is the one which causes dysentery. What is dysentery? It is the, what is dysentery? It is a diarrhea with blood.
Yes.
So whenever you see a watery stool, that is watery stool, along with that if the blood is present, then we call it as what? Then we call it as dysentery. And very characteristic feature of this amoebiasis is what? The dysentery, how does it look? What is the description for that? Sago grain. Sabudani, do you all remember this? Sirisha, Chaitanya, Radhika, and others.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sabu.
ma'am.
So sago grains, how does it look? No, if you look at the
White.
fecal sample, it has got that peculiar appearance. So that's why it is described as what? Sago grain. So now, why all these things are required for you? Definitely, it is required because a question can be asked, a case-based description. Maybe an elderly female has come to you and she is complaining of the bloody diarrhea, and that stool, it looks like giving an appearance of the sago grain with all the GI symptoms. Then first thing what it should strike to your mind? It is amoebiasis. The stool description itself should strike to your mind. If there is what some other description is there, it is peculiar to that particular disease. Next, just to give a brush up for this amoeba, like we have already know that this amoebiasis is caused by Entamoeba histolytica, but it belongs to the family of which one? Amoeba. Now this amoeba, it can be intestinal amoeba based on the location, or it can be free living. So in this free living, we need to remember these three fellows. We need to remember who are these three fellows: Acanthamoeba, Negleria floweri, Balamuthia, Mandriliaris. So these are the three pathogenic fellows. We need to remember them, especially in this Acanthamoeba. It causes corneal keratitis. That is, this fellow has got lot of affection towards the cornea. That is eye infection, or this fellow can even directly get into the brain, causing meningitis, like amoebic meningitis. So this fellow is very much crucial in causing these two pathological lesions. And now our focus is on entamoeba because this fellow will be causing endemics or the outbreaks. And there are other fellows which are present in our human intestine, but they don't cause much of the harm. And in this, again, we need to remember this entamoeba gingivalis. So in this gingivalis, it is present in what? Where it is present, students? The name
Gums.
itself is indicative. It is present in the
Gum.
oral cavity, that is in the mouth. So very important is that almost all most of these amoebas, they exist in the two forms. One is the active form called as trophozoite. So this trophozoite, what does this fellow will do? He will keep on eating, eating, eating. So he is a feeding fellow, and it is like I want the food. So that is a trophozoite, and he is very active, motile and all. And another one, whenever the system, I mean condition is not favorable, he will convert into cyst, which is a dormant form, which is non-motile, and this fellow doesn't eat anything. He will remain like that, but he is very dangerous because he is the infective form. But in this entamoeba, there is no such infective form. Next, uh, whenever can you see this picture over here, students? This is the trophozoite form of this entamoeba histolytica. Yes. Now, what is the peculiar feature of this entamoeba histolytica trophozoite form? In the slide preparation, what you can see over here, how do you identify it? It doesn't have any what like it has got this particular what morphology, no description is there, because it is like amoeba, it keeps on changing its morphology. But very important is that this fellow will eat the rbcs. So within this fellow, if you see ingested rbcs, and if there is a cart wheel, so can you remember this cart wheel, how the bullock cart wheel it will be? So the nucleus has got this cart wheel appearance and ingested RBCs, and the nucleus is not clearly seen on the slide, then you think that this fellow is nothing but our entamoeba histolytica. Yes, students, are you all clear? Students, uh,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So then what happens? Where does this fellow will live? So his favorite place, look at the picture, it is a human intestine. So this is a small intestine, and this is our large intestine. So which is his favorite place? Where does this fellow will live? So his
Colon.
favorite
Large.
place is the colon itself. Especially look at over here, the cecum and especially the sigmoid part of the colon. So these two are his very, very, very favorite places. So if you want to catch this fellow, go to this area or you go to sigmoid colon. Then you can find lot and lot of these numbers over there, especially the trophozoites and even the cyst also. So if you want to catch this fellow, where we need to approach? The cecum or even the sigmoid colon. Then it affects the intestine, and another favorite place for him is what? So if he causes perforation, this fellow will directly go to which one? He will go to extra intestinal area, that is the liver. So his
Liver.
another favorite area is what? So after the stomach, if it damaged our intestines, then he will say, now I am ready to get into circulation, and I will get into portal circulation, and I will go to the liver. And there also this fellow will cause full damage only. So there he will cause what? Amoebic liver abscess. So he will damage that liver also. Then after that, which is his next favorite place, student? So this fellow will next get into the pulmonary, that is lungs, especially the right lung. So the lower lobe of the right lung, he will say that now I have spoiled the liver, now let me go to the lungs. Then after the lungs, where this fellow will go? Array, now heart is also left. So now where I will go? I will go to the heart tissue also. So he will spoil the myocardium also. Then he will put his eye on where? The brain, the cerebrum, this cerebral tissue. So when he reaches there, then it is almost all what? The fatal condition. So all these other than intestine, if he attacks, they are all called as what? Extra intestinal amoebiasis. So through the hematogenous route, so this fellow will get out of the intestine and he will reach and affect all other tissues of the host. So question can be asked for you. So which organs are most commonly affected by the entamoeba histolytica? One is intestine in the order of appearance, followed by liver, then followed by lung tissue, and followed by what? Students, which one?
Heart. Heart.
Sorry, heart or the myocardium, then followed by the brain. So this order you need to remember, because once a question has been asked related to this order itself. And worldwide it is present, this entamoeba, it is present worldwide. Now it is not there much in America, because already I told you an outbreak has happened in the US, and they have taken the proper measures. So now it is like very rarely we find this entamoeba in the US country. Then it causes two very important clinical manifestations. One is amoebic dysentery, that is intestinal amoebiasis. Another one is liver abscess and pulmonary. So these are all extra intestinal. Next, let us look at this fellow's morphology or structure. How does he looks? Let us describe him now. Yes, what is this particular first picture? Students, Monesh and Gautam and others, Rakshit, Smriti, Chaitanya. Uh,
Trophozoite.
it is the tropozoite. So what does this fellow will do? He's a bindas fellow. He's very active. He keeps on eating. He loves to eat the food. What does this fellow will eat? He will eat our blood only. So what we can see, he will eat our blood, WBCs and all. So in his body, what we can see, RBC. So like RBC inclusions we can see. So that is one of the identifying feature or the peculiarity feature of this trophozoite. Then what is the nature of this nucleus? What did I tell you, students?
Cart.
Cartwheel. So how the cartwheel it looks, no? The same pattern you can see. Then what you can appreciate? What is this, students? It is a pseudopodia. So you can even see the pseudopodia. Yes? Do you all agree? So this fellow, just to describe this, he has got a pseudopodia and he will phagocytose so that you can see the RBCs within him, and his shape is very irregular and he keeps on eating the food. So this is what we describe this trophozoite. Then after that, what happens if the condition is not favorable? So when he reaches the colon, what happens? If the condition is favorable, he will multiply, he keeps on damaging. This trophozoite only, it will keep on eating our intestinal tissue. Especially remember, in the intestine, his favorite tissue is which one, students? Submucosa. So especially he will just invade and he will eat the submucosa. My food is available, he keeps on eating. So that is the reason why the ulcer is formed. Now if this fellow will find that array the host is very active, host immunity is too good, all the macrophages and antibodies they are attacking me, then what, and antibiotics are also taken, then this fellow is very chalu and he is intelligent and he will convert into pre-cyst form. Pre-cystic form, he will try to develop a very thick layer, and in this pre-cystic the first stage is what? Uninucleated. So first stage of this pre-cyst, some pseudopodia can be seen and this fellow will have what? Only one nucleus. And then later he will convert into, he will divide by binary fission, and then he will convert into further binucleated cyst, then trinucleated, and ultimately he will get into this tetranucleated cyst. Then, how do you identify this uninucleate, binucleated, and how do you differentiate it from the tetranucleated cyst, students? Are the slides visible? Students, are the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Yes,
how do
ma'am.
you identify? Because in uninucleate, binucleate cyst, very important is that you can see the glycogen mass and even the chromatid body. So, this is very important diagnostic thing. You need to remember it. So, where are these? This is what you are seeing. No, this is a glycogen mass. His food, and these are the chromatid bodies. As such, they don't contain any chromatin, but they take up the stain. So, in the uninucleated, binucleated cyst, these two glycogen mass and the chromatid body are seen. But when this fellow will mature, and when he has got four nucleus, that we call it quadrinucleated cyst, that time there are no glycogen bodies and no chromatide bodies. So in a matured quadrinucleated cyst, these two are absent. And very important is that this fellow matured thing, he is the infective form. He is the infective form for the another human. Yes? Any doubts here? Students? Students? How many
No, ma'am.
forms are there? He exists in trophozoite, then unfavorable condition precystic, then this precystic will convert into cystic form. This cyst is uninucleated, binucleated, trinucleated, and ultimately this fellow will turn into a very stronger form, that is tetranucleated or quadrinucleated. And what is the peculiarity of this fellow? He is very much resistant to our gastric acid or gastric juice. He is resistant, so that our gastric juice is not able to kill him only. So such a powerful fellow has been emerged. So do you think he is like very strong now? We can't do anything. So that is the reason he is like very infective to the man. So this point you remember. This fellow is highly resistant to the gastric juice. So just look at the life cycle over here, because they can ask questions related to this. Very important is man is the only host. In us only he will have all his sexual and asexual everything he will complete in man only. This fellow doesn't need any other snail or mosquito, nothing he requires. Then what is the infective form, students? Now you should only answer this. What is the infective form, students?
Quadrinucleated
Because when we
cells.
go for the
Quadrinucleates.
community based surveys, no, if you want to collect the stool sample where there is outbreak, so in the stool sample if you see this matured quadrinucleated cyst, without what, that cyst doesn't contain glycogen. It doesn't contain what? It doesn't contain glycogen mass or chromatid body. So without that only four nuclei are present, then done, it is a quadrinucleated cyst. What is the mode of transmission? Feco oral route. Then this cyst is resistant to gastric juice or gastric acid, this you have to remember. Now, very important is that look at here. So this quadrinucleated cyst, it will get into our stomach, it will get into the duodenum. So this fellow will get into the small intestine. Nicely, he will come everywhere. But some people they say that this cyst will undergo excistation. Excistation means what? It will convert into trophocyte. Now from the cyst, who will come? Our hero will come. That is trophocyte. That is the active feeding form. So it may happen in the small intestine, that is in the duodenum, or it may reach everywhere and ultimately at the junction of this one, that is ileocecal junction. Maybe at this junction also the excistation may happen. So these are the points you need to remember. So where does the excistation happen, students? Either it may happen in the small intestine in the duodenum, or it may happen at the ileocecal junction, the excistation. Then after that what will happen? From the cyst, the first fellow whoever comes, we call it as what? Metacyst. And this metacyst, it will further divide and it will convert into what? Trophozoite. Now one point I want to add over here. One cyst will contain how many nuclei, students? How many? How many nuclei are present?
Four.
Four
Four,
nuclei.
four.
Yes. Now
Hmm.
from this four nuclei, how
Double.
many trophozoites will come from one cyst? How many trophozoites will come? How many babies will come?
Eight.
Eight trophocytes. It will give rise to how many
Double.
fellows? Eight fellows will come out. So four nuclei say how many things are there? Eight fellows will come. This point you have to remember, because in later in other waterborne cysts, maybe there may be quadrinucleated, but they will give only two babies. But here how many fellows are coming out from one cyst? Eight fellows. Now these trophocytes they will come out and they will go to which one? Large intestine. Now this trophocyte it will travel nicely aramse into the large intestine. So he will go everywhere, he will roam, everywhere he will roam. So if at all if he finds the condition is not good, then again he will convert into what? The cystic form. Now, very important in the beginning itself, I told you where does he lives, where does he will burrow, students, which is his favorite part of the intestinal tissue, mucosa or
Submucous.
submucosa? It is submucosa. This point has to be there in your mind. So then this fellow lives in the submucosal tissue of the cecum, and there it keeps on dividing. Look at here. So one fellow trophozoite, it will undergo longitudinal binary fission. Like this, he will divide. So this fellow will keep on dividing within the submucosa. Then he will just come out, and sometimes he may get into cyst form. So then he will just come out into the fecal matter. Now remember, students, in the fecal matter or the fecus, under microscope, if you see both cyst and trophozoite, or if you see the trophozoite, then what does it indicate? Then it indicates an active infection. Like at present, right now, currently, this infection is there for that individual. But in the same host, in the fecal matter, if you see only cyst but no trophocyte, this fellow is not there, means then what else it indicate? It indicates that it is only a carrier. That means what? He is not having any active clinical manifestation. He is only a carrier. So this fellow can spread the infection to many other people. So this point you need to remember. So in the fecal matter, trophocyte are seen, then it is active, and only cyst is seen, then it is a carrier. Next, what is the incubation period of this amoebiasis? Like if the person is ingested the cyst, then within how many days he will show the clinical manifestation? How many days, students? It may vary from how many? 4 days to 4 months. So that is the incubation period. So this point you need to remember. Then very important is that whoever ingests the cyst, not necessary that they will show the clinical manifestation. That means what? 90% of the cases are what? Asymptomatic. 90% are what? Asymptomatic. Only 10% they will show the clinical symptoms. That is 10% are symptomatic. And one more point I'll tell you, if this fellow just lives in the lumen of the intestine, then don't worry, no clinical manifestation will be there. But only when this fellow starts invading, that is, if he starts burrowing and invading, especially into the submucosal layer, that time the clinical manifestation will start. So only the invasive form will show the clinical manifestation, and that too it happens only in 10% of the cases. So if this fellow is present only in the lumen, don't worry. Then after that, what happens is that the trophocytes, whoever is there, this trophocyte, he is actually motile, and this fellow, he will penetrate the intestinal tissue and he will cause the damage. How he is causing the damage? This trophocyte, what this fellow will do, he will be releasing a like toxic substance that is called as histolysin. This point you have to remember. So because of this histolysin, he will destroy the columnar epithelial cells of the intestine. All the epithelial cells of the intestine, they will get destroyed because of this histolysin. And one more toxic substance this fellow has, that is amoebic lecithin. Now because of this, what happens? This fellow will adhere, or like he will just stick on to the intestinal tissue. So these are the two things because of which he is causing the damage, and ultimately he will cause what? Ulcers. This ulcers we call it as what? Amoebic ulcers. Yes, are you all clear, students? Now, what is the peculiar feature of this amoebic ulcer? How do we describe it? It is a pinhead center. So, if you look at some pin, how does it will look? So, the center will be pinhead center. A pinpoint will be there, and edges will be raised. So, this is what morphologically you can see. But when you take a histological cross section, when you take a cross section, look at this picture. How does it look? The ulcer. Can you all describe, Chaitanya and others? How does this ulcer looks like?
Flash, flash shape.
Yeah. How do you describe this flash shape? So how does
Upper
a flash look? Look at the mouth.
base
This we
wide.
call it as mouth, and the neck. So it is narrow. Here it is how it is narrow. And what about the base or the bottom? It is broad. It is broad. Why this particular ulcer is looking like this, a flash shaped ulcer? Because already we know that the trophocytes, whatever is there, they are burrowing, and especially they get into the submucosa. And then what happens? It will keep on moving, burrowing laterally. It will release the histolysin and other enterotoxins, and he keeps on damaging. So like what happens? So that is the reason why we see this broad based and narrow necked ulcers, which we call them as what? Flash shaped ulcers. And ultimately this will result in what? Necrosis. This necrosis results in what? Just it will throw out all the inflammatory fluid out of this neck or the opening, and this particular outpour will contain what? A lot of trophocytes. Yes, are you all clear here, students? Why it is looking like a flash shape? Yes. And very important is this fellow trophozoite, no, he lives especially in the periphery. If you look into the center of the lesion, this fellow is not present. Especially if you want to catch this fellow, no, just go to the sides or the corners or the periphery of this ulcer, then aram se you can catch this fellow. So where does this trophozoites are present? They are present in the peripheral part of the ulcer. This point is very important. And sometimes what happens, if this fellow is very aggressive, he keeps on eating the submucous a lot and lot, then he will get into the further mucosal deeper layers, and he will erode, and then he will cause what, students? Perforation, and ultimately it will result in what? Peritonitis. So this is what? A complication of our intestinal amoebiasis. Yes, are you all clear, students? So what are the complications of the intestinal amoebiasis? One is perforation, another is peritonitis. Yes, students, clear over here?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, then sometimes what happens, this fellow may also infect the appendicitis, I mean appendix, and whatever the infection is there, it may mimic the appendicitis. So these are all the possible complications caused by this intestinal amoebiasis. And sometimes what happens if the ulcer is there, if it is a superficial ulcer, then don't worry, it will heal on its own. But sometimes it may erode the adjacent blood vessels and it may cause what? Hemorrhage. And sometimes this ulcer may get into the chronic stage, and this chronic ulcer it will get into what? Granulomatous pseudotumor. Like some granulomatous tissue will be seen, and it will appear as if it is a tumorous growth, a bulging out growth, and that we call it as what? Amoeboma. So it is some tumor-like growth which you mistaken it for what? A malignant tumor. So these are the some of the few possible complications of what? Look at this picture over here of this chronic ulcer, that is granulomatous pseudotumor. And sometimes if the intestinal amoebiasis is chronic, it may result in thickening and scarring of the intestine, and it may lead to the adhesion of this intestine to the adjacent viscera. So all this may happen in the chronic condition. Now, what is a possible clinical feature? It is nothing but the amoebic dysentery. What is amoebic dysentery? It is the watery stool, that is diarrhea with blood. Then furthermore complication is fulminant colitis. So in this you can see the patient will be complaining of all the GI symptoms. Along with that, there will be high grade fever will be present. Now, what are the clinical features of this intestinal amoebiasis? Students, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, what are the clinical features? Remember that when you want to confirm it is like entamoeba or amoebiasis dysentery or some bacterial dysentery, very important thing is that look at the temperature, febrile nature of the patient. Usually, there won't be any fever, or if at all it is present, it is of very low grade fever. So, usually, no fever, and the patient will complain of uncomfortable abdomen, and there will be noise created in the abdomen, that is growling abdomen, and there will be diarrhea. In the beginning, suddenly you won't see all this bloody diarrhea. Later, after few days, you will see the dysentery. Yes, and if at all there is a cecum is also involved, that time the clinical manifestations it may appear like appendicitis. Now, let us see some of the differentiating points between the bacillary dysentery and the amoebic dysentery. That means what? It is a bloody stool that is caused by the bacteria. Yes, students, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Slides are
ma'am.
visible. So now, how do we
Yes,
differentiate from the dysentery caused because of bacterial origin and because of the entamoeba origin? Let us see some of the differences over here. Because if you go for some field visit or somewhere, you need to know all this clinical differentiation. Then only you can say that yes, this particular community, this problem is prevalent or it is an emergency situation. So here, the affected age group, if it is a bacterial or the bacillary dysentery, the most common organism is Shigella or E. coli, and the most common affected individuals are adults. Whereas if it is amoebic dysentery, most common organism is what? Entamoeba histolytica, and who are the affected people? Children. So, for example, they may give you the question in a community, children of 15 to 16 years they suddenly complain of the bloody diarrhea, and as such, there is no fever and it is not acute. So, if all this picture is given, then you can think of that it may be amoebic dysentery. Then, what is the onset? It is acute bacillary dysentery. Suddenly, it will start acute, whereas amoebic dysentery it is gradual in onset. That is why, if you remember the incubation period. So, what is the incubation period? It is
4 to
4 days to
4 days
four
to
months.
4 months.
Then what are the other clinical features? Abdominal tenderness. Like in bacillary dysentery, the entire abdominal area, the patient will complain of tenderness. Whereas in amoebic dysentery, localized, only particular area the patient is pinpointing, then again you can think that it may be amoebic dysentery. Then what is this tenesmus? Very, very important. Very, very important clinical presentation. That is urge like or feel like going for stool passage. Like if the patient feels that I always feel like stool passage, so that urge itself we call it as what? Tenesmus. And this is very, very characteristic feature of bacillary dysentery. It is very severe, whereas in amoebic dysentery the patient doesn't have that urge like now I want to go for stool passage. That urge will be there, but it is of what? Not that severe as compared to that of the bacillary dysentery. Now look at the stool frequency. So what about the stool frequency over here? So if the stool frequency, sorry, more than 10 times a day, if the person passes stools, then we call it as bacillary. It is a manifestation of bacillary dysentery. If there are like less number of stool passage, maybe 6 to 8 times, if the patient says the motions have passed, then again you can think of what? Amoebic dysentery. And here, students, one very, very important point, that is the odor of the stool. If it is a odor less and if it looks like a currant jelly, look at over the picture over here. So it is a currant jelly. If the stool something looks like this, then you can think of bacillary dysentery. Amoebic dysentery means what? It is a foul smelling, very bad, dirty smell will come from the stool. And then if that smell is there, and if it looks like a sago grain, this is very important. Students, can you all hear me? Radhika.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So if it is a like very foul smelling and if it has got a sago grain appearance, then what you can say? You can say that like it might be an amoebic dysentery. Very important. And then stool color. Look at the color of the stool. If the stool looks bright red, like a freshly blood has come out with stool. So if such a color is there, then again think of that it may be dysentery caused by Shigella or maybe E. coli. Or if it looks very dark red, then again you may think of the amoebic dysentery. Then look at the stool nature here. Now here we need to make a cutoff over here. If the stool has got if the stool has got blood with mucus, but less of the fecal matter. So lot of watery and more of blood and mucus, then we call it as what? Bacillary dysentery. Whereas in this fellow, amoebic dysentery, blood is present, mucus is also present, and fecal matter, bulky material is present. When all these three are fecal matter is present in large quantity, then we call it as what? Amoebic dysentery. So looking at the stool itself, you should be like, yes, it is a bacillary dysentery or it is an amoebic dysentery. If you get a very bad smell, just check out from your mind the bacillary dysentery. You just keep thinking that yes, it might be an amoebic dysentery. Yes, now all these things have happened. Now let us think of further more things. Like we will take the stool sample, we will collect it, and then look at the stool sample, students. Can you all see the slide over here, the picture over here, students?
Ma'am.
So now, can you tell me what is this picture is showing us, students? So when we take the stool sample, what will happen? If it is a bacillary dysentery, this stool it will stick to the container. So whatever the container is there, you just remember BC. So BC, bacillary dysentery. So it will stick to the container. C means container. So whereas amoebic dysentery, this fellow, this stool, it won't stick to the container. This is one of the peculiar feature of this tool. When you put to the container, look at with your eyes. If it is sticking, okay, it may be bacterial infection. If it is not sticking, then think, array, it may be protozoal. So that thing you need to see. Then let us take this tool and let us look into the microscope. We have prepared a stool preparation and we have put it in the slide. And if you see lot of macrophages, then maybe it is what? Bacillary dysentery, BMC. Remember BMC, that is bacillary dysentery with containing lot of macrophages. Yes, Rakshit and others, Smruti.
Yes, ma'am.
And if it is amoebic dysentery, what will happen? Macrophages are very less in number. And RBCs, look at for the RBCs. So here the RBCs, they appear in Rowley's format and they are bright red. Whereas in amoebic dysentery, they look somewhat yellowish brown in color. So you need to be very clever, intelligent. Your brain should work out like, are this is there, this is not there. So which one it will be? So that pakka confirmation you need to give. And if your RBCs look clumpy, so then also it is an indication of amoebic dysentery. Then one more thing, very, very important. What about the eosinophils? Eosinophils, they are present in bacillary descent or absent? Students, Sirisha, Chaitanya and others, Gautam.
Absent, ma'am.
It is
Absent, ma'am.
absent. Whereas in amoebic dysentery, it's a parasitic infection, no? So it will stimulate
Allergy.
the eosinophils, allergic reaction. So these eosinophils, they are present. If you see eosinophils, then you think that, this is definitely a parasitic infection. Then what is a peculiar feature of this parasitic infection? One more thing. Whenever there are rise in eosinophil contents, that time you can see charcoal laden crystals. So what are these charcoal laden crystals? Students, can you look at this particular picture?
Yes,
Students,
ma'am.
so what are these crystals? They are what? Diamond shaped. They are diamond shaped. So microscopical, all this you can't see with your naked eye. It is impossible. So only under microscope you can see these diamond shaped charcoal crystals. What are these crystals? They are nothing but the proteins of the eosinophils, especially the galactin. Remember, this question has been asked on this. Whatever I am telling you, know, it is very important from your MCQ point. So what are these charcoal laden crystals? They are especially seen in the allergic reactions, and they are also like asthma or even parasitic infections, especially entamoeba histolytica infections. So you can see these charcoal laden crystals. What are these crystals, students? They are diamond shaped eosinophilic proteins, especially galactin. Yes. Then now to confirm pakka, what to see, we should see who is a favorite fellow, the trophozoite. So you can see the trophozoite in this slide. This fellow will be like aram se he will be moving here to there to here. So he is like nicely he will be playing over there. I can move from here to there to here. And one more confirmation, what you can see, students, in the trophozoite, he eats, no, he is a food loving fellow, he eats everything. I want food and food. So what will be seen in his belly? What can be seen?
RBCs.
Yes. So if you see a trophozoite and if it is motile and if you see RBC, then you put a stamp seal over there, say that it is a infection caused by entamoeba histolytica. That is, of all the GI symptoms are there, amoebic dysentery. Then if you see bacteria, usually Shigella and all, they are non-motile, right? They are non-motile. In this slide, if you don't see any moving fellows, very inactive, they remain there only. So then no RBCs inside them. So all these things if you see and lot of macrophages, then you think of bacillary dysentery. Yes, are you all clear, students, how to differentiate between bacillary dysentery and amoebic dysentery? Because in the field studies and all, you should be knowing if this is a community-based problem, yes, or no, it may be bacillary or amoebic. So you need to identify these organisms on the spot itself. Next. Now what happens? A little bit additional information I'll give you here. Again, MCQ, it is very important. So other than intestinal amoebiasis, this fellow will get out from the colon. He will enter the portal circulation and he will find his one more favorite organ, that is what, students? It is the what?
Liver.
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 So now in the liver, remember, and amoeba, remember. So here, this is one of the code word you just remember. Entamoeba, this fellow loves to occupy the right side of the human body. That means what? He will infect the, or if it affects the liver, he will cause the abscess or hepatitis or liver inflammation, everything on the right portion of the liver, right lobe, especially upper lobe, especially posterior superior. This word is very important. So where does this enter? Entamoeba histolytica, he will affect the liver, the right side, especially right posterior superior portion of the liver this particular fellow will affect. This is very important. Right side, right lobe, posterior, superior. This location you need to remember. And in the liver, it may cause amoebic hepatitis. So during this time, the liver enzymes and all they won't be seen much of rise. So it is still an inflammatory condition, and it is not here. All our trophocytes will be present. Our heroes will be present here. Very important is that in amoebic liver or amoebic hepatitis, no cyst. The cyst form will not be seen. Only active form, that is trophocytes, are seen. This is very, very important. Yes, are you all clear, students? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Then after that, what happens? Very important is that after inflammation, this fellow will cause the liver abscess, that we call it as amoebic liver abscess. And in this amoebic liver abscess, we give a description. That is very favorite is thick chocolate brown anchovy sauce type of pus. He will cause a pus. And what is the color of that pus? It is chocolate brown pus. So if you see some chocolate brown pus coming out of that, then we can say that it is an amoebic liver abscess. And one more thing you have to remember, that if you want to aspirate the pus material and to want to look at these trophocytes, very important is that this fellow won't be present in the center of the lesion. Where he will be present? He will be present in the
Listen.
periphery. So we always should remember this. In the periphery, this fellow will be present, or it may be present if the pus is coming out. Maybe in those porings also it may be present. But if you take the sample from the center, you may not appreciate any of this entamoeba histolytica. Nothing you can see. Then after that, extraintestinal, one more area he may go, that is in the lungs. So in the lungs, which lungs he will affect, students? Right lung or left lung?
Right,
Which is his favorite place? It is
right
the,
lower limb.
yeah, right lung, especially in the lower lobe. And then sometimes he may affect the diaphragm also. So sub diaphragm also it may affect over there. So from the liver, he may just, the pus may just come out and he will affect the subdiaphragmatic area, or he may get into the lung, or he may get into the what, the cerebral area, the brain, and there it may cause a fatal condition. Then what is cutaneous amoebiasis? Where does the cutaneous amoebiasis it will be? Students, so where is the cutaneous amoebiasis seen? Especially it is seen in the anal region. Especially in the anal region. So what happens? Multiple discharging sinus. So what you can see, multiple around the anus, there are multiple discharging sinus with the gangrene. If you see, then you call it as what? Cutaneous amoebiasis. Then this fellow may even affect the genitourinary area. So especially it is most common in the people who go for anal intercourse. So these are the different presentations you need to remember. So lab diagnosis, what we do, students? Stool microscopy. So in the stool microscopy, so what we usually see, trophocytes and cyst. If trophocyte and cyst are present, then it is an indication of what? Active infection. In this stool, if you see only cyst, that is CC, that is, it indicates it is a what? It is a what? Carrier. The person is
Carrier.
carrier. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Then again in this stool microscopy, if you see other features like eosinophils and less amount of pus cells and especially charcoal laden crystals, so then all these are suggestive of what? Entamoeba histolytica. Then in the stool microscopy itself, if you see fecal matter with the blood, and so all this we already have seen. So if all these are characteristically seen, then you can say it is a amoebiasis. Then again there are something that is stool culture media. Stool culture media. So like just you need to remember the names, nothing more else is required. That is Craig's media, Nelson's media, Robinson media. So these are the three medias that are usually used to culture this entamoeba histolytica. What are those three media? Culture media, Craig media, Nelson media,
Nelson.
and
Lincoln.
Robinson media. Yes. So I think I'll continue with the MCQ part and rest of the things in the next class. Okay. So what all we have seen here, students? Students, uh,
Ma'am.
so what all we have seen today? So we have
Enter.
seen that today the parasites, the classification of the parasites. Yes, we have seen the protozoa. Then after that, helminthes. Then helminthes. What are the three things? Cystodes, nematodes,
Nematode.
trematodes. So to remember the cystodes, just remember CT scan. That is CT. That is cystodes and the tapeworms. Then after that, nematodes means all our ascaris, ankylostoma. They are roundworms. Then T. So trematodes. If you put one more line, that is flukes, leaf-like
Loops.
looking. That is flukes. Example is what? Cystosoma. So all these basics we have seen. Then after that we have started with the amoeba because from our public health point of view, amoebiasis is very important. So amoeba, what you have to remember, where the encystation happens and where the excistation happens, and which is the infective form. What is infective form? That is the,
Quadrinucleated.
Quadrinucleate
in the
trophozoa.
quadrinucleated
Cyst.
cyst. What is absent? Glycogen.
Glycogen and chromatid body.
These two are absent. This point you need to remember because in other parasites also we will see quadrinucleated cyst, but this particular thing it is absent. Yes, and this is the infective form. And where does which is its favorite place? The favorite place is which one?
Submucosa.
Submucosa. The,
Cecum.
yeah, the colon and all. So that is its sigmoid colon and all. Especially it will affect the submucosa. And the very classic ulcer is what? Microscopically under cross section, what you can see, flash shaped ulcers. And if
Flat.
the ulcer goes down and down, then what you can see, it can lead to perforation and peritonitis. And one more thing is that ulcer, how do you describe? The edges are, the borders are undermined because the trophozoites he will be nicely eating, no? So it will eat everything and the border or the edges will be undermined. That means nothing is left over there. Only the necrotic material is there. And this fellow, he may get into the liver, and in the liver, what you can see, students? Liver, what you can see? Students,
Anchovy.
Anchovisa.
yeah. What is the color
Abscess.
of that pus? Full
Abscess.
chocolate.
Chocolate.
This fellow is.
Chocolate.
Yeah, very creamy, yummy chocolate pus he will produce. And in the lungs also, what he will produce? The sputum. So sputum, what is the color of the sputum? Again, here also the description is chocolate brown only. If
Chocolate.
the patient like coughs and the sputum color is chocolate brown, then over. Then you can think of this fellow also. So you have to take the history of the patient, look at the surrounding sanitation and all. So then you may suspect all these things. Okay. Then the points, whatever with the stool and all we have learned, no. So what is the smell of this stool? How does it look? Foul smelling stool,
Sago grain.
sago
Powder.
grain appearance. And if you put it in container, then what happens? It will stick or it won't stick to the container.
Doesn't stick.
It
It
won't.
won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Then after that, in the slide, what else we can see? The diamond shaped. What are these?
Charcotleden.
Lead and
Crystal.
crystals.
Very good. And what are these crystals? Charcotated crystals? Nothing but
Eosinophilic
Eosinophilic
gelatin.
Creatine.
proteins.
Protein.
Yeah, very good. And it is also seen in other conditions like any allergic conditions wherever the eosinophil count is high.
Arsenic.
So in those conditions, you can see all this. And very important is the fecal matter or the stool. It contains mucus, blood, and lot of fecal. The solid mass also will be there. So this is one of the things very bad smelling. So these things you need to remember. And sago grain. So if you remember all this, then it is thumbs up. You are done with this. Yes. So I'll wind it off here. Tomorrow there is a surgery lecture. Yes. All of you read this, and after that, no, we'll solve the MCQs related to this. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
Rakshit and all, you Radhika. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Fine. So shall we discuss? We'll all meet tomorrow. Yes, Gautam, Radhika,
Yes, ma'am.
Sirisha, Chaitanya, Rakshit. So open your
Yes, ma'am.
textbooks on the relevant books, read everything. Then after this, it will be clear for you. Yes, I have covered
Okay, ma'am.
everything as per my knowledge. Yes. Okay. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, bye.